John, are you familiar with Spotify Wrapped?
That's where it tells you what you've listened to during the year, right?
That's it. At the end of the year, Spotify sends you based on their analytics. I don't know how it works, but so I got my Wrapped, but I didn't want to talk to you about my Wrapped. But I'm assuming you got yours.
You know what? I haven't checked. I know
Oh,
that
okay.
my daughter Sierra had told me she got hers, so I should go check. I haven't been on in a little over a week, but yeah.
One of our listeners, who I'm assuming by their Spotify Wrapped, is an avid listener. And I don't know how many we actually have. I wished I did, but I just wanted to shout out Philip, who, according to his Spotify Wrapped, we were his number one podcast for the year. And
Awesome.
also, he is in the top 18% of our listeners, which means we may have more listeners than I thought.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool.
That's amazing. That's really cool. Thank you, Philip, for
Yeah,
listening
thank you,
to us.
Philip. That's
Wow.
awesome.
That is
Appreciate
great. I
it.
love that.
All right, that's it.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. So let's start another show then.
I
Give
love it.
Philip some new things to listen.
John's got the facts, the science to share. Sean's got the questions flying everywhere. Two minds collide in a curious zone. A podcast journey through the brain you own. Sean teaches Sean about his brain. It's weird, it's wild, it's hard to explain. Neurons fire and the jokes remain. Sean teaches Sean about his brain.
Welcome back to John Teaches Sean About His Brain. I'm Sean, and as always, I ask the questions while John explains what our brains are actually doing behind the scenes. Today's episode tackles a topic that shows up virtually everywhere right now: the Make America Healthy Again movement, otherwise known as MAHA. Public health conspiracies, and more broadly, why certain health narratives spread so fast, feel so convincing, and become so hard to let go of once people believe in them. This is not an episode about attacking people, mocking beliefs, or telling anyone what they have to think. It is an episode about understanding how the human brain processes fear, uncertainty, authority, and identity, especially when it comes to health, which is one of the most emotionally charged subjects there is. We are going to break down why conspiracy style explanations feel satisfying, how mistrust in institutions shapes belief, and what actually works and what doesn't when it comes to debunking misinformation without triggering defensiveness or shutdown. Because if we want better public health conversations, we want to talk about science, safety, and we need to understand the brain mechanics driving those conversations first and foremost. So today, John is going to help me, and hopefully all of us, learn how to recognize weak arguments, evaluate evidence more clearly, and then engage these topics with curiosity instead of certainty. So let's get into it. Hi,
That is a
John. It's
lot to
good
get into. Yeah, we've
It
got our work
is.
cut out for us today.
I mean, I feel like when I was writing that intro, and based on, hey, we wanted to have a conversation about public health, misinformation, how to have these conversations, and most importantly, what this podcast is based on is what's going on in your brain, and then how can we use that information to tackle some of these things. And as I was writing, I mean, you saw my show notes, but just the intro, this is a lot to try to wrap your arms around, and I think that's part of the problem, right? Is it's just so
Yeah,
much.
it's so much, and I think that another part of the problem is that it's so complex.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
it's easier when something's just a simple explanation, just to talk about it and move on. But when things are complex, that makes it harder because our brain, as you know, we've talked about, I think even last episode, that the brain wants to make things simple.
Mm-hmm.
So it
The
likes the
simple answer.
simple, yeah, the simple
Yeah,
answers always
yeah,
win out. And so this is complex, but your brain wants simple. So, and
yeah.
then I think you also hit it that our our the kind of the emotions around healthcare is that's, we want to be healthy. We want our loved ones to be healthy. We don't want people we know to be sick and diseased and die. We want everybody to be happy and live full, healthy lives. And the point is, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Americans aren't
We
that.
are not. That's why I'm sorry I made a face while you were talking, because, and we're going to get into it. That's what I want to talk about is that statement that you just made. I guess it might be true at its core, is that we all want to be healthy and we want our family members and people to be healthy. But if that was true, I feel like we would do more about it. But let's pause on that. Let's pause on that for a second, because what I brought up a touchy topic, or I brought up something I want to clarify, and that's the Make America Healthy Again movement. I get calling it a movement. Even that might be not the best way to approach this, but I'll tell you, I went on to the MAHA. I actually went on to the Department of Health and Human Services, because that's where the policy that addresses the platform Make America Healthy Again is. This is from their platform. This is not any, I didn't create this. I just, the priorities as listed on that website are chronic disease prevention. And then a subheading under that is better nutrition, physical activity, and preventative healthcare measures. Number 2 is food safety and nutrition. And so there was a promise on there that in the beginning of the new year, in 26, there will be updated dietary guidelines that align with MAHA's goals. Number 3 is environmental health. And so the investigation and some policies around the link between environmental factors and public health. And then the 4th topic is chronic childhood disease. And so that is the platform that, like I said, is listed on that website. So do you have any thoughts about those 4 topics as I presented them?
So I don't have, so my thoughts are, those are good goals to have.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So I like the goals. It depends on what you do around that. So, it's one thing to write down your goals. And the second thing is, well, where is the money going? Is the money going to help make people healthier or not, would be really the question for it. But I think that, like, when they talk about like ultra processed foods and things like dietary stuff, there is really strong scientific evidence that ultra processed foods are harmful. So that's something that should change. And then like the healthcare pricing transparency is a good policy, and like emphasizing prevention rather than treatment, that is really good. We need to start doing that. But then there's things that we can do for that. Like we can make healthcare accessible to everyone, so you can go into a doctor to see if my cholesterol is getting high, so I can do something about it before I have a heart attack type thing. And the doctor can say, hey, you need to change your diet, or, some things like that. So I think that, when I said we all want to be healthy and want the people we love to be healthy, and you said, well, there's things we could do. That's the point. There's things we can do, but they're hard things. They're lifestyle changes and behavioral changes, and we would rather have a quick fix. So that's where I think it's easier when somebody says, well, big pharma is trying to keep you unhealthy so that they can sell more pills. Now I've got somebody to blame. And so then it's like, this is standing in my way and, my family's way from being healthy, when in truth, if you would change your eating styles and get up and walk around and exercise, I'm preaching to myself here, then you would be healthier, anyway. So I like the goals. I think there's some good things about it. It's all the behavior around the goals that concerns me.
Okay, so I wanted to lead off. This is going perfectly for me right now. In that, when you go to the United States government website, the Department of Health and Human safety
services.
I just lost the S. Sorry. But when you go to that website and you read that platform, and I took it directly, that is the wording directly from that website. It's like, yeah, that sound, at least to me, I was like, that doesn't sound bad at all.
I'm for all that.
But one of the, if not the architect of MAHA, as we know, is the secretary of that Health and Human Services, RFK Jr.
Yeah.
And that platform, as we're seeing it now, was his platform for his run for president in 2024. And so I can't separate necessarily, unless you have some other advice, I can't necessarily separate those two things, RFK Jr. from MAHA. And so that's where I have to talk about RFK Jr. just a little bit, because this is just my opinion. I'm not speaking for John, but I think that my take on RFK Jr. is he actually, in my opinion, gets the problem largely correct, the problem, but he gets the causes, the underlying causes, largely wrong. So I'm speaking to a researcher, I'm speaking to anybody else just with some intuition on it. If you have a problem and you get the cause wrong, how can you even start to get the solution right?
Yeah, you won't. Right.
It just won't happen.
No.
And again, I'm not trying to, but I mean, he's a public figure. He's gone on record with a lot of these things. So I think that, I'm not attacking RFK Jr. It's just a lot of the things that I've heard him say. Here's an example, and I don't want to belabor this, but in 2005, in June of 2005, RFK Jr. wrote an article that appeared in Rolling Stone and then also in Salon.com. But the title of the article was Deadly Immunity. And then throughout the article, RFK Jr. alleges a government conspiracy to conceal the connection between, and you got to help me with this word, thimerosal. It's in, it's like a mercury in vaccines.
It's the mercury in vaccine, yes.
Okay. I should have looked that up before I started down this road. But the connection between the mercury in vaccines and childhood neurodevelopmental disorders, including autism, which you and I have touched on briefly in this podcast. But the article contained factual errors, leading Salon to issue 5 corrections. And Joan Walsh, who is Salon.com's editor-in-chief at that time, and she was the sole editor on this story, according to her. And she said she mistakenly relied on Rolling Stone's fact-checking process, a process that she later learned was less than arduous, according to her. So as soon as this piece is picked up, she claims, and I quote, "We were besieged by scientists and advocates showing how Kennedy had misunderstood, incorrectly cited, and perhaps even falsified data. It was the worst mistake of my career, and honestly, I probably should have been fired." In 2011, so listen, 6 years later, it took 6 years. Salon.com retracted the article in its entirety. So think about this. In 2005, they issue 5 corrections, bang, bang, hey, correct. And then in 6 years later, it takes that long to retract the article. Salon.com said the retraction was motivated by accumulating evidence of alleged errors and scientific fraud underlying the vaccine autism claim. A corrected version of the original article was published on Rolling Stone's website. Then Kennedy in 2011, later, or early 12, goes on Joe Rogan, the Joe Rogan Experience, and says that Salon caved to pressure from government regulators and the pharmaceutical industry. So then Walsh directly responds to that allegation and says, that's just another lie. We caved to pressure from the incontrovertible truth and other journalistic consciences. So this is just one example cited from someone who was directly involved in this. But it took 6 years for them to take that story down.
Yeah, I wonder. So it's 2005, you said, when it was?
In June of 2005 is when the article was published.
So I'm guessing but I would be almost certain that it was probably based on the 1998 article by, I think it was Wakefield
Andrew
and
Wakefield.
yeah,
Yeah.
and colleagues. And I know we talked about this
Yeah, we
on
did.
another
That's how I remember
podcast.
his name from you. But
Yeah, okay. So
yeah.
it's that article also was retracted from scientific journal articles. I mean, if you're getting it retracted out of kind of pop journal news sources, then that is pretty bad. So, but I bet it was based largely on Wakefield's claim that later was found to be untrue.
Didn't you say, or I read, Wakefield had his medical degree pulled in the UK?
Oh, his credentials, yeah,
His credentials,
his
that's what it was.
credentials,
His credentials.
not his
Okay.
degree, but his credentials in the UK because he. So this is also where maybe I should just kind of remind us, if you don't mind me
No, no, no,
reminding.
please.
Okay,
Please.
so the whole idea that kind of the conspiracy around scientists are like trying to control things not to get us, and you can't trust scientists. You know, there's a peer review process that's pretty arduous. Speaking of arduous, it's a pretty arduous peer um, uh, review process that helps put the best science forward. So when
Mm-hmm.
you first conduct a study and you publish it, and you might be the first in that area, then you do have a lot of sway. Those first few studies, those first handful of studies that come out, they are very impactful. And so if you wanted to argue that a scientist could have, maybe undue sway on a topic, I would say, yeah, if they're one of the first ones to publish an article about it. But then when they
Okay.
publish an article, they submit it to a journal, and then there's peer reviewers, and they're anonymous. So the
Mm-hmm.
editor gets it and sends it out to scientists in that same field. And I've submitted journal articles that have been peer reviewed, and I've also been a peer reviewer multiple times for journals who've asked me to review an article. So I've seen the process kind of from both sides of it. And when I'm reviewing somebody's work, I don't know who wrote it because that's usually the author's names are withheld. So you
Oh,
just
okay.
get an
That's
article
okay.
and it says, "Could you review this?"
Mm-hmm.
And that they kind of put you on the spot, because if you know that it's somebody that's well known, then you're probably less likely to try to find issues with it, because you go, well, they'll come back and say, well, I know more than you because look at all the articles I publish, or I'm a giant in the field, so why are
Right,
you
right.
challenging me? But you don't get that. You just get the article. And so now I'm thinking, if there's some real flaws in the design, and it's some scientist is just, maybe it's just a grad student that's just getting started, and I don't catch that, that's going to make me look bad. So I'm really going through this with a fine-tooth comb. But I also have a responsibility to the field of science to make sure that crackpot ideas don't get out there, and that there's evidence behind things, and that people aren't overstating what they've found. We found this
Mm-hmm.
difference, which means rust-colored T-shirts cause autism or something. I'm just trying to pick out something that you're wearing, kind of a.
Yeah,
So
thanks a
if
lot.
if that
I don't know
idea
what you're
comes
saying about
out,
me, but okay.
so if that idea, if you've done some study and you're presenting it, how do you interpret it? Do you say now that that shirt causes autism? Because then that's way overstating it. So
Right.
there's a responsibility that I have to try to correct that as a reviewer. And then I expect other reviewers, if I have errors or I haven't thought of something in something I submit, they point that out and then I address it. That's kind of how science polices itself. And I'm not saying that every scientist is a great person and has great intentions, because they don't, because scientists are people just like everybody else. And you get ahead in science, the more you publish, the more likely you are to be tenured and to get pay raises and to be invited onto committees and get accolades and all of that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's really a publishing game. And there's people that just want to publish, so they'll throw things out to just get published. But that's what the peer review system kind of controls that. So every once in a while some bad studies will get through, but usually when that happens, like if I were to publish something and it was wrong and I noticed it, usually it's pointed out to me in the peer review section. But if it's not, if later there's some more evidence that comes up and it contradicts what I was saying, because by the way, being able to reproduce the results is kind of the gold standard of science. If you know, I hate using that term now because everything is the gold standard of science is being used a lot right now on things that are not the gold standard or anything but you know, if you can replicate the study, that's good. But let's say some people are trying to replicate it and they're not finding the same thing. And so now I'm looking at my design, I'm going, oh, I have a design flaw here. If I go to the journal and say, hey, I've noticed people aren't able to replicate this study I published, you published in your journal of my work. I've been looking into why that might be, and I've realized I have a design flaw in my experiment, and I think I've messed up. So I'm requesting you to retract my study and take it out of the journal. And if I do that and they agree with me, and they're not going to just retract it because I ask, because they don't want, it's like, we should have caught that. We should have caught the weakness in the design too. So they kind of, it's not that they stand by it, but they say, well, let's wait and let us look into it as well. Let us get some other scientists involved rather than just pulling the article. So then they'll have it peer reviewed again, basically. And they'll say, here's what the author is saying. Do you agree? And then other scientists look at it and go, oh, that is a design flaw. Yes, you should retract it. And then they'll retract it. But if that, and then that makes me as a scientist, that kind of keeps me on good ground, on good footing with the journals and with other scientists going, wow, this person is conscientious. Everybody makes mistakes. They made a mistake. They caught it themselves and they brought it up. And that's good. If I don't catch it or I don't say anything and somebody else talks to the journal and then the journal catches it and they have to come to me, that's not quite as good on my behalf. But that's still not the end of the world. It's, it's still like, you kind of messed this up. So if I say, oh, yes, you're right, I'll look at it and I say, yes, you're right, please retract that, then I'm still on pretty good footing. But there are some scientists that go, no, I stand by what I published. And then if that gets retracted anyway, without the scientist's consent, so to speak, that really hurts a scientist. And that's what happened to Wakefield. And it turns out that his study was paid for by, so over $1 million was donated from a group that wanted those results. I'm not saying that's why he got them, but that's why he refused to retract and say, yeah, retract my study. He said, no, I stand by it. And that's why, even with all the evidence, he still stood by it because he didn't want, I think in my view, he didn't want the lawsuits that would come from him stepping down from it. So he ended up losing his credentials in the UK over that because he's kind of stood his ground, which was another topic we had recently.
But yeah, he doubled down on it, right? But
doubled down.
I just want to make sure we have a clear nexus here between what we're talking about, and that is the Wakefield study, everything you just described. But RFK Jr. is citing that study.
Probably.
In this case, I've heard him. I've heard him state
he
that.
Has. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
That he has on more than one occasion that I have heard him say, not a bot, not anything else. I've heard it come out of his mouth that he references that study. And it's the only study I've ever heard him reference. Now, I'm not the expert on RFK Jr. It's just, those are my observations. I've heard him say, reference, if not by name, the Wakefield study and the information that came from it, even though that study has been retracted and his creds have been pulled. So again, there is a problem. There is a problem. There are children who are born with autism, and the child's not the problem. There's something, whatever it is. I don't claim to know what it is, but okay. So we've identified a problem, but the solution for that problem, or the cause of that problem, I'm sorry, is where, again, to my point, is maybe a little bit flawed, and so. If we stand by the statement that if you don't find the source of a problem, you can't come up with a solution for the most part, then that's where we're hitting the stumbling block here.
Yeah.
And so let me move on, because you brought science up, and the other thing with RFK is for the last 2 decades, he's wanted to shut down the CDC I think probably because of the stance that he has on vaccinations. But the other statement I heard, so during the confirmation hearings in front of Congress, he made the statement that, and this again is a quote, that diabetes has gone up 98% in the last 20 years in this country, and that no one is doing anything about it. And then I heard him outright blame the CDC. He said the CDC's job was to make sure this didn't happen. They didn't do their job. And so I don't know that the number that it's gone up 98% in the last 20 years. I don't know if that's true or not. But think about, so listen, this is what we set up. The Secretary of the Health and Human Services Department of the U.S. government it wants me to believe that the cause of lifestyle-related chronic disease is that the scientists and the public experts at the CDC are corrupt and either want me sick or just don't care if I'm sick. Is that an overstatement on my part, or do you see my feeling?
No, that's not an overstatement. Yeah, he's kind of been at war with the CDC because, I think his position is, I like science, just not the mainstream science. That's the one I have a problem with. And CDC is the mainstream science. And that's where it's just so hard to get wild ideas to pass through these mainstream institutions that have been around for decades and decades, and institutions have a history of helping with healthcare. And I also find it, kind of amusing at times when people will say that, like it's the CDC's fault. So you're saying that you want more government interference with you. You want the government to start telling you how much you exercise, or you get taxed, or you get, what do they do to ensure that you don't have diabetes? Do they make you take a pill? Because I know what it was like when the government said, everybody please wear masks while we're under this huge coronavirus. And that was just, you couldn't believe that the government told me I have to wear a mask to protect other people. Now the government's going to say, you can't buy donuts and you have to walk every day, not for other people, but for yourself. We're going to get involved in your life and make you do things that we know is better for you, or we're going to charge you taxes or fees or whatever. Like, I don't understand how they would think the CDC was going to do that.
Imagine, if you will, and maybe I'm going into a dystopic future here, but that your insurance premiums are based on how closely you follow the recommendations. I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying, think about that. That's an ultra polarizing thought of what you were saying, right? I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying, okay, so I've seen several numbers, and I'm not, I don't want to just throw out crazy numbers because that's what we're talking about on this show right now. But can we agree, or would you agree with my statement that a large number of the American public do not follow the CDC guidelines?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? Because I saw a number that said 90%.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at that.
I'm not saying that's the number, folks. Listen, I would actually love for people to blow me up in the comments. That means we're getting connected here. But I'm not throwing out crazy numbers and holding up a chart or a graph that you can't read to make me look more official. I'm just saying, let's go back. So one of the Maha what did it get listed as? Oh no, I didn't write that down. But part of the platform is updated dietary guidelines.
Yeah, that's coming out. You said in 2020.
It's coming out. They said in the beginning of the year. I don't know if that's January, February, whatever, but they are promising that. Going back to the statement, the CDC did nothing. Listen, there are scientists and public health experts at the CDC that do research, which I'm assuming. Well,
there used to be. Yeah, okay. Most of them have been fired and replaced.
Fair point. Yeah. Fair point. Prior to this current administration, there were scientists and they were held to the same standards that you described, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So they're at the CDC. They do the research. They have research that gets published. It gets peer reviewed. Everything you just said. And then they put out, hey, we recommend that you get this many hours of sleep a night, that you don't take in over this much sugar, that you do this much exercise. Whatever the recommendation is, great. Now what? Because 90% or whatever the number is, percent of Americans don't follow the guideline.
Don't listen. Yeah, I don't want to do all that.
So what is making a new guideline going to do that no one's going to listen to?
Well, it won't, but they don't have to answer that question. Maha doesn't have to answer that question yet. They can make the guideline. They don't have to answer the question yet. And when it comes time to answer the question, it'll be somebody else's fault. Something else will be done because there's with mainstream science, with actual science, there's also accountability. It's accountability for your studies. It's accountability for what you say and do. And that if you're not following that system, then you don't have the accountability. And so that makes it difficult as well. But, as Americans, we do have worse health outcomes than our peer nations.
Yes,
Like it's just,
absolutely.
do you remember, oh man, I can see his face because he ran for president, the mayor of New York City, Bloomberg,
Yeah,
the
Michael
mayor of New
Bloomberg.
York City,
Mhm.
when he said that, I don't know if he said that they can't sell 32-ounce soft drinks anymore, or they
Yeah.
get paid, you have to pay more
There's
for it
a
or something.
tax on there was a soda tax.
There was
or
a
sugar
soda
tax.
tax.
I think they called it a sugar tax. But either way, yes.
People went crazy. Like, how can you tax us for this? Like, I thought we were going to help you be healthier and get rid of diabetes. And it's like, I mean, people were ready to march for that. And,
Yeah.
you know that my son, Oren, goes to graduate school over in Scotland.
Yes.
So in Europe and the UK, a lot of this stuff is already in place. Like if you buy, he was just telling me, I was asking him about this. If you buy a Coke Zero, it costs like £1. If you buy a regular Coke, it's £1.50.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that has sugar in it is taxed higher to try to encourage people to make healthier choices.
Mm-hmm.
And they also have limits. So they're the different companies that make candy and cookies and all of these things, they have a limit on how much sugar can be in them. And he said the products taste differently when he goes over there. You buy the same brand of cookie, but it tastes different there than it does here because there's not as much sugar. And, now that he's been over there, he's like, things over here are just way too sweet. Everything is so sweet over here because his system has gotten used to
So interesting.
less sugar.
Yeah.
So why can't we have healthier choices here and just get used to it? Yeah, it'll take a couple of years and everybody will be mad for a couple of years. But those are, if you do some changes like that, that would be healthy. So rather than, and by the way, research, mainstream science shows that sugar is bad for us. It causes cancers and diabetes and, different things like that. So the research evidence is there that sugar and ultra processed foods are not healthy. But again, that comes down to that's harder to think through. It's not as simple. So you want to, say, well, that's complex. Let's just pick on one thing. Let's pick on seed oils. Like, if you use seed oils to process things, that you should use beef tallow or butter instead of seed oils now, because that's bad. Because now you can pick out little things like that. And I'm not against beef tallow and butter. I know people have, different sensitivities or whatever where they have to use those things. But I'm just saying picking on those types of things is not going to solve the problem, but it makes it simple. It allows your brain to grab onto something simple. And then you can kind of get behind it and go, yeah, look what CDC's doing. They're letting everybody eat seed oils. And it's like, well, they can't make the rules that you can't eat seed oils. They're just another part of the government. They're trying to do the research and say, here is a whole list of things that will make you healthier. And nobody's listening to them. And the government could pass laws that would restrict, Keebler and all of these companies on how they can make their food and what's in it. They could pass that bill tomorrow, and that would help everybody out, make everybody healthier.
The other thing, just my observation, having been extremely poor and then being able to afford things that I like, it is expensive to eat what I would call healthy. It's more expensive to eat healthy. It's way cheaper to eat garbage food. And by garbage food, I mean unhealthy food that is contributing to this lifestyle.
Yes.
So it's interesting because you also brought up COVID. and I had another thought on this topic, and I'm going to choose my words carefully, but because I want to represent it, what is actually in my head. But I don't believe that the MAHA in its current state, the one that we're talking about right now, would exist without the pandemic, without COVID. I think that I'm saying I think a lot because, again, these are just my opinions, and I'm open to hearing anybody's counterpoint. But think of the mistrust in the American government and the institutions of the American government hit an all-time high. It hit a fever pitch during the pandemic.
Yep, it did.
And so this movement, it was galvanized by that mistrust. And so then there's this weaving of a conspiratorial narrative about our public health agencies, the CDC and several others. And that seemed to really get a foothold during this time. Vaccine skepticism was the big one. And then also, I don't know where this came from, but this fear mongering over the feminization of men. I don't even, I kind of know what it means, but still it's like, okay. The idea of alpha males and just really weird stuff that I don't personally think about, but maybe that's, my privilege. Maybe I don't have to think about it.
Well, you're already an alpha male. You don't have to worry.
Yeah, but I don't see myself that way. That's the problem. I don't. Yeah. But all of that to say that again, just take vaccines. And there are people, and I'm stating, there are people that I know, and that had vaccinated their children to bring them to school, that had gotten flu shots, that had done all of these things. And then somewhere along the line, they're like, I'm not taking that shot that the government just made 2 weeks ago. And I'm not making light of this, but in the state that I live in, at the time of the pandemic, I worked for the state government. And there was a policy, or what would you call it? But the governor enacted a law that said if you don't get vaccinated, you will be separated from state service. And there are people that I know that actually voluntarily were separated from their job because of the refusal to get a vaccine. I'm not, again, bashing them, making fun of them. I'm not doing that. I'm just stating a fact that there's something I saw it happen. And it's, again, their beliefs and where they came from are, that's I'm not claiming those to be mine, but I just am, that has led me to this, I guess, conclusion, this feeling that it was all the perfect timing for all of these messages of, Fauci, the CDC, all this misinformation. And you've already answered one of them. And in the past episode, give me the simple answer. And then I do notice too, I made the crack, but I mean, holding up a graph with numbers on it and an arrow going somewhere, and using big words. And you're like, I'm in.
Yeah. This is the problem. And when I knew we were going to talk about this topic, I had planned on saying this when we first started, and then I just forgot to, and it hasn't really come up. But I don't get down into the weeds of arguments about the, how a vaccine, if this vaccine is really good or not, and this one versus this one. And, there's different types of mercury. The mercury that is usually like mercury from fish is what is deadly, and the mercury in vaccine is a different type of mercury with a different name, and it's not as deadly, and it bonds with this and that. There's all kinds of arguments about stuff like that I've heard. I'm never going to get into those arguments because that's not my field. I don't know. I don't understand that area well enough, and I could be misstating something completely. So my point is that I listen to the scientists in those areas and trust what they say, because I don't know what the answer is. And if I don't know it, I'm pretty sure that, somebody who's a political figure or who's been, who's my plumber, but comes in with all their ideas while they're fixing the toilet about everything that's wrong, I'm not going to listen to them or the politician or other people either. In fact, I'm not going to listen to other scientists when they're outside of their field. So if you listen to
Okay.
There's so many people that will say, well, I'm a doctor, or, well, I do science and I can tell you that vaccines are, it's like, you know what? I don't really believe that you are a scientist if you're a doctor, because to be a scientist, you have to conduct research and you have to use the experimental method. And I'm not saying that scientists are smarter than doctors. I'm just saying, if you've gone through that process and submitted articles for publication and you understand that system, you're probably not going to be saying everything you say, because it's like you have one or two articles, and now that is what you use versus like the 80 that's there. So it would be like if I decided I'm going to do a study on, this is hard to do analogies off right on the fly. Let's just say, I've heard that there's going to be an NBA, some players show up for a camp to teach kids how to dribble the basketball better.
Okay.
And so I think, I've always wondered if NBA players are taller than the average person. So I go up to check it out, and it's Spud Webb and I don't know what
Bogues.
Muggsy Bogues.
And,
they're there, so there's like four of them there.
Yeah.
And I just say, can I measure you? I'm trying to do this study, and they agree. And I find out that their average height is, so their average height's 5'7".
Mm-hmm.
And I go, okay, well, the average height of the normal American male, or the average American male, is like 5'9" or 5'10".
5'9" and a half.
5'9" and a half. So now I write a paper and I say NBA players are actually on average shorter than the average American, and publish it, because I went and I found the NBA players, and then somebody tries to replicate that. And so they say, okay, I'm going to go to the All-Star game and I'm going to randomly select 5 players from the roster of the All-Star game. And they say, wow, the average NBA player is 6'9". I'm going,
Pretty close.
That's a lot different than what I came up with. So that's back to where then I would say, well, I need to withdraw mine because I had a faulty design. I didn't randomly select. I just heard there were going to be some NBA players, and it would be easy for me to collect data on it with them. So that was bad. But the point is, there could be 80 other people that all agreeing that, no, the average height is 6'9" in NBA. And I still have my one study out here saying, no, it's 5'7". And if somebody pointed and said, no, I'm going to go with that 5'7" because that makes sense to me. I don't like to think that they're a lot taller than me. So I'm going to go with that 5'7" study. It's like, but now you just know that there's 80 other studies showing they're 6'9". Why would you go with the 5'7"? It's for a political point. And so when there's 80 studies out there that vaccines don't cause autism, and there's one study that does, why would you go with that one study? When that's why it kind of also shows why, like, meta-analyses and these studies where researchers will look at, a large group of studies to say, here's what the full evidence is, and that's what we should be going by. So when people say, no, I'm a doctor, I'm a researcher, I'm a doctor, so I can tell you that it's like you're not, or you would understand, if I really am a scientist, I'm going to go with the 80 over the 1 because I know that that's how science works. But well, go ahead, because I had another point with what you were saying about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
COVID.
I was just going to say this. Would it be fair to say, I don't want to mistake your message, but would it be fair to say I wouldn't go to a scientist to get a checkup? Right?
Yeah. No, that's right. I would go to
I'm not going to go to a doctor to talk about scientific analysis, because they are different things. They could both be very well respected in their field, but they're completely different processes.
Yeah. And if your doctor says, here's what the science shows, and they're telling what the preponderance of the evidence shows, that's okay, because they're the conduit between you and the science. And they can give those, and they go by CDC recommendations to say, right, should I give a vaccine or not? Because it sounds like I'm hitting on, I'm giving a shot to doctors. I'm taking a punch at them. I'm not. I'm saying doctors, all of them that I know, and I have great respect for them, say, well, the guidelines suggest this. It's those that argue with the guidelines who say, no, I know better because I'm a doctor. I know what science really says. It's this one, outdated, really weird study is the one we're going to go with. It's like, why would you do that unless you have an agenda? So that's kind of what I'm saying. Most doctors that I know, I have great respect for people in the medical field and scientists. and plumbers, by the way. So all of those, it's just like kind of stay in your lane type of thing, I guess.
Right.
But going back to your CDC, I think that if you say, and this is kind of Maha and CDC, if you say that something is wrong with Americans' health, would you agree with that?
I completely agree
Yeah,
with that.
I completely agree with that. True. So there's a true statement there. Like something's wrong with how healthy we should be healthier.
Yes.
But then kind of the next step is if you can add fear in there and or anger, now you've added emotions to it. Now you can use emotional manipulation to get people angry and worked up. Like they're trying to make us wear masks. Can you believe it? And then you start getting upset. Then they give you a simple target. Like it's corrupt scientists. It's Fauci. He's the one. Fauci's doing this because he's probably making millions. And now I'm angry. And now I have a villain, somebody I can really be angry at. And it just kind of comes like it kind of becomes more of like a tribal identity at that point, that it's us against them. I have a red hat, you don't. And it just, they even have an acronym for their side, MAHA. Like science doesn't have an acronym. I mean, we would be like, yeah, it's like, yeah, MAHA. And then we're like, yeah, scientific methodology that always tries to prove the null hypothesis. You just kind of lose out and people are like, that's boring, because science is boring, and science isn't based on like fear and finding a villain. It's looking for answers and giving, here's what science shows in the answers. And you can't really get charged up about that and emotional behind it usually. I mean, I get emotional when people misuse it and they make other people afraid. But yeah, I just think that there's so much of that tribalism, us versus them. There's a villain, it's Big Pharma or it's Fauci. There's, my emotions are getting yanked around because, like you said, people who have always vaccinated their children, all of a sudden they hear your kids could die. Well, I don't want to vaccinate my kids if they're going to die. So tell me a little bit more about that. And then it's like, yeah, Big Pharma's in, has it out for you because they're wanting to sell their treatments. And if they can make sure that enough people get sick, then they can sell more pills. And it's all a conspiracy. It's really frustrating that that's still in our day and age, still part of what's happening.
It's getting worse, right? I mean, all the things that we've talked about for 2.5 seasons now, social media, the way that we're being manipulated, easily manipulated. But let's go back. Let's talk about there's something you said that I don't want to let it get lost.
Okay.
Because it's the beginning of, John and Sean just spent 45 minutes railing against conspiracy theories and lack of science and all that. But now what, right? What are we going to do about it? But you just said something that I think we need to expand on. At least I needed expanded on. You said you go to the person or people in that field, the scientist in that field. How do I do that? How do I find that?
That's also getting harder because now the way you do that is you go to, we have institutions in America that for decades have stood and have helped get us where we're at. It's why we are the leading country in science. We have the most Nobel Prize winners, and it's not that they're all Americans, it's that they are doing their research in America. There's funding.
You just said that we're so take the two things that I've heard you say. America is the best scientific country and the worst at listening to it.
Yeah. That's
I'm sorry that cracked me up so much, but I couldn't let that go.
That is getting to where it's at. And so, but you have these institutions like the American Medical Association, the AMA. Okay. And you have the CDC, and it's been replaced because you got a political figure in that could hire and fire. And there were thousands of years of research experience that left the door in the first few months of the new administration of RFK Jr. taking over, of firing people, replacing people, putting people in that agreed with him. Some of them are, doctors that say they're medical doctors, but have never seen a patient, never practiced, never done research, but now they're the head of all of the researchers. And so it's really like the CDC now coming out and saying that they just changed their policies online to say that vaccines do cause autism, even though science shows that it doesn't. And so
And what was
that,
the other
the
thing
CDC,
about hepatitis B?
hepatitis B, that they're not going to give vaccines to children anymore.
If the mother it doesn't have Hep B or something. I shouldn't have brought it up because I'm not versed in that, but I just remember reading that.
Yeah, it's that only those mothers that are at a risk of having hepatitis B, only their infants get the shots. But hepatitis B, people get confused on how that's transmitted, and it's transmitted sexually, but that's not the only way it's transmitted. It can also be transmitted through the air, through fluids like runny noses. And so if you have an infant that's nursing or around the table and you've got other adults in there that have hepatitis B, they could give hepatitis B to the baby. And then there's this whole thing of how long they live after that. I mean, just life expectancy is cut short, their sicknesses and all of these things. And that's just another example again to say the logic doesn't make sense if you look at it from a science point of view. If you look at it from a political point of view, maybe.
Let me get back then, though, I'm sorry, but because it used to be the CDC.
Yes.
But I'm hearing you say now, in your opinion, it's not.
Well, your state has just agreed that they are not going to follow the new CDC regulations.
Right.
And that's the first time. There's 2 or 3 states, and I'm sure there's going to be more. But that's the first time in our history since CDC has been around that states have said we can't follow this anymore.
40, whatever year.
CDC 80 years of this.
But then no CDC.
So AMA.
Okay.
American Medical Association, some of those independent bodies, they have been around for decades. And since they've been around, life expectancy has increased. Measles are basically gone. Polio is gone because there's kind of the science and the scientific standard around those things. So that's how you have to find out your information. You have to go to those sources to get it.
So maybe I'm thinking my way through this. I wasn't prepared for this line, but I'm trying to give people something to actually grab onto here, because it's a scary thing for me when I hear you can't listen to the CDC.
Yeah, I know.
The Centers for Disease Control. I shouldn't be listening to them right now, and not from a political standpoint. Not because I don't believe in their politics or anything. It's because I can't trust the science.
They're giving harmful information. Yeah,
I can't trust the science coming out of that place. So then, again, if there's someone in my life that is talking about these things, and I choose to, I'm not advocating, I never do, arguing with them or trying to fit, whatever. Mm-hmm. But if you are going to take that stance that you're going to try to combat what you believe to be misinformation, I feel like you have to have a trustworthy source to go to mm-hmm. gather that information. And so maybe it is your own state government.
Maybe.
I don't know where in the state government. I
wouldn't say that. I would say go to these foundational institutions that have been in America for decades in that area. So if it's healthcare, go to those institutions to find out. And it's not the CDC anymore, and then if you look, the CDC will be disagreeing with the AMA and others now. But even if you go to John Hopkins puts out policy statements. The Mayo Clinic puts out policy statements on treatments on their research too. You can go to and I'm not saying go to WebMD. I'm saying go to the Mayo Clinic website and look up, the topic area and see what their research is and what they give recommendations,
Okay.
And so there's ways to get to it, but you're right. It's really difficult. That's the hard part, because this is the unfair part. If you want to talk about this, feels unfair that you have these institutions of science that are supposed to protect us that have now been hijacked basically for political points of view. So now I can't trust them. So who do I turn to? And now I see somebody in a lab coat and a doctor on TikTok telling me, using all the big words, this is exactly what you need to know. And there was a study just published, study just came out that you can't do this and you can't do that. And I'm going, oh, maybe I should listen to them. And it turns out, no, you shouldn't be listening to them, because they're picking the one study that they want to say whatever. And there's 80 others that show something different. So it's unfair. It's unfair that you shouldn't have to have a medical degree to know if you should have a vaccine or not.
Yeah.
You know, and no other country in our peer countries in Europe and the UK are struggling in the same way. It's frustrating that we're having to go through this. It's unfair that as Americans, where we have the best research and information in the world, other parts of the world look to us, that we can't provide that to our citizens. We provide all of our information to people in England and Scotland and in Germany and France and Spain. We give all of that information to them and they follow it. But our own citizens can't get that information straight. It has to be filtered and politicized and changed. And now it's just unfair. It's unfair.
Here's an interesting thing that just occurred to me 55 minutes into this conversation, but think about the brain, and which you always are. I don't mean you, but I'm thinking about the brain. And you want to talk about frustrating is how unfair it is. But think about this. Think about the amount of energy that you need to refute false or weak statements, BS, sorry, strong language, but versus the amount of energy that one would need to produce the BS, right?
Yeah.
I can right now, because you said, TikTok or something in a lab coat. I could, in 5 minutes, I could come up with, chat GPT research, cherry pick what I want, put on a lab coat, and say ridiculous things on social media. And it would take me 5 minutes. And the amount of cognitive effort to do that is pretty low.
Yeah.
It's pretty low. Now, take that and you watch that TikTok, John, and you're like, that's not true. That's not right. Okay, now, and you have to go and do research, actual research, and find the studies and read at least the abstracts. I know that's me. You read the 80-page study, right? But how much cognitive effort that it takes you to come up with all of the information to refute my nonsense that took me 5 minutes to create.
And each individual kind of has to do that themselves. And
multiply that by how
all
many
the
of
viewers.
us. Yeah.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So then that's how disinformation, I don't even want to call it misinformation. I think it's more disinformation that gets out. And that's how that happens. And partly, since you mentioned the brain, I feel bad because I haven't even brought this up really, but the brain, our brains love, or what's a stronger word, like long for, crave. Our brains crave causal narratives. We want to know why something is the way it is and why things happen the way they do, because we're pattern recognition machines that are always looking for patterns and cause and effect. We're always trying to figure that out. So now you have these heuristics, like the simplistic heuristic that we've talked about, but there's also the availability heuristic, where we give more weight or more credence to really vivid emotional stories rather than, over statistical evidence. Yeah. So here's all these statistical things about COVID and how many people, 4% of Americans are going to die if they're not treated. If you get a vaccine, only 0.04 chance that you'll die. Boring. But that statistic gets boring. But I can tell you, my uncle, who is 84, I'm making this up, I don't really, but I'm just saying, my uncle who was 84 just got the vaccine and the next day he died.
What?
So that carries more because of the availability heuristic. Our brain takes that shortcut and believes that over the statistics. Yeah. There's also confirmation bias. We've talked about that, where once you believe that maybe these vaccines are going to kill you, then that you see that everywhere. Like, I mean, you start to believe that. Or maybe a better example would be, I mentioned seed oils. So if you say that seed oils are bad for you, then you eat some French fries from a restaurant and your stomach you go, oh, It's the seed oil. I can feel it. My stomach's starting to hurt. Now you're starting to see evidence for it everywhere. That's confirmation bias. So how do you, like, you can't prove the negative. And that's the problem that Maha wants you to do, wants science to do, is prove the negative, then prove that this doesn't cause, prove that Sean's rust-colored shirt doesn't cause autism. Like, I can't. I mean, I could give a couple studies, but you could say, well, what about this and what about this? And then you're just spending a whole, decade looking at rust-colored T-shirts and trying different things. It's like saying, that prove that what are the horses with the horn? Unicorns don't exist. Yeah. And it's like, I can say, and so this is where science, sorry, I'm just kind of running all over the place now.
I feel like I did this to you. So
you did this to me. I've never been this much out of control during a podcast. It's like we're doing this to ourselves too as scientists, because we've talked about this, where we say, the evidence shows, that you use is and we helping. Probably this and this. So I do a study and say, yeah, the evidence shows there's probably not unicorns. And then they take that loop and say, yeah, I think there are unicorns. So what they're saying basically is there are unicorns. They just don't want to come out and say it. So, prove that there's not. And then it just gets all turned around, and it's like, no, that's not how science works. It's not how our language works. And yeah, it's as you can tell, it gets frustrating, but that's how the brain processes things. It's the availability, the confirmation bias, the simplicity.
All these heuristics are working against us.
Our brain takes shortcuts, which is good most of the time, until, like you said, somebody with a lab coat for 5 minutes, and then you've got to spend hours trying to figure out if they're right or not. Nobody's going to do that.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we can do. And this, it may seem like, and maybe it is, that this was about Maha, but for me, it wasn't. It's my frustration with not being able, and again, I'm not judging anybody who does, but it's not even about my ability to argue with people who make outlandish claims. Mm-hmm. It's not, I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is my health, my family's health, my friends, my concentric circles. I care about their health. And I feel like why I wanted to talk to you about this is I feel like I'm in a place where I don't know anymore where to go to get the information, who to believe. Mm-hmm. And it's a scary and frustrating feeling to just want to go, and it's not even about vaccines. I'm stuck on, and why I keep going back to the phrase or the idea is I'm talking about the lifestyle related chronic disease, things that are actually preventable. And I would, in some cases, I would put cancer in there as well. Not always, but in some cases. And so there are things that are preventable by making lifestyle changes or choices, or things I want to continue doing. And I don't know what they are. I don't know where to go to find it. And so you've kind of talked about that in your just opinion, not medical advice, but CDC is not trustworthy right now. So seek out institutions that have good reputations, have been around a long time, and then there's another part of it is trust your own experiences, what you've seen, what you feel when you're reading something, and go, I don't know, put a little thought into it, I guess. It's try to fight that simplistic nature of just going, I saw something on TikTok and they said, this will make your foot fall off, so I'm not going to eat that anymore, or whatever. I'm being dramatic on purpose, but put a little thought into it. And then if it's something that matters to you, take the time and try to find the right places to go and confirm or deny the information that you're being given. Yeah.
I think question authority.
Yeah.
Even what I'm saying, question that, like I'm saying, I don't trust the CDC right now. And you should question that for yourself, and listeners should question that for themselves. But then when you question it, use those same standards for the alternative claims. So if you're saying, okay, you're saying that, vaccines don't cause autism, but I'm going to really look into why you're claiming that. Well, when you hear that vaccines do cause autism, look into it with that same, those same standards of, I don't know if you're right. I've got to read something to prove it. And then, you know, real solutions. It's never, when you're talking about healthcare, it's so complex. There's never just an easy solution to things. So real solutions require understanding kind of the real mechanisms behind it. So, if we want to talk about what kind of the real drivers of American health, if you want to make Americans healthier, I don't know the number, but I think it's close to 30 million Americans right now are uninsured. That's not healthy. That means if they have a health problem, like if I've got a problem, I'm going, this doesn't seem good. I think something might be wrong. I don't have insurance. I'm just going to have to tough this out for 2 or 3 years. And then all of a sudden, something that could have been fixed just gets progressively worse and worse and worse. I know that there's millions of homes, like 10 or 15 million households in the U.S. who have food insecurities.
Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to figure out what to eat. And so helping Americans get health care, helping them with food and make sure that they have food. We have enough resources to feed probably almost everybody in the world. I know we have enough resources to feed everybody in America.
We throw out.
We throw away so much food.
As a country, how much food we waste.
It's unbelievable. And just a side note, my dad was the president of a small college, and they got a lot of their funding was donations and things like that. And they had a dormitory and a cafeteria, and there was a company that made pies, that he heard that they threw away like 80 pies every night in the dumpster that wasn't used that day. So he went to him to talk to him about if there's a way they could give them donate to, for students or, whatever. And you know what their response was? We're not allowed to give food to outside sources. And then there's also the liability in all of this. So we're sorry, we can't help you. So now there's all these pies getting thrown. And I know these are college students that didn't need a piece of pie, but just think about the concept.
Yeah.
We can't share these things with people who could use them because of all these rules and regulations we have in place. Yeah, it's crazy.
So there was an interesting. We're running way over, but I'm not there yet. So I got a couple more things, but
okay,
because I'm looking at it again from a place of privilege, because I was going to try to talk about if you don't know any better or where to go, some things you could do to just try to be healthier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a medical expert, so don't listen to me for medical advice. It's just, I get adequate sleep, cut down on the sugar, some physical exercise. You don't have to go to the gym for 2 hours a day. You don't, but just go for a walk once a week or try to get up and move around at a minimum, right? So again, these aren't hard target numbers or hours or whatever. It's like cut out some sugar, get adequate sleep, try to get some physical activity in. Here's the bad one, but get off your phone. So reduce your screen time. And, if nothing else, and, for Sean, like, moderation of alcohol is probably a great place to start, but like, there's some things that intuitively I think you can do, and I'm making them sound really easy, but here's what I missed. If you're worried about, healthcare, if you're worried about where your next meal is coming from, all of that's nonsense. Like we've talked about this. If you're unhoused, if you are, if you have food insecurity, like me sitting here saying, make smart lifestyle choices, I'll tell you what to do, buddy, because I'm worried about my next meal. So if I got to dive in a dumpster and get some Krispy Kreme or something, then you can take your sugar talk on down the road. Like I got to eat. And I completely missed that until an hour into this conversation because I was only thinking about myself. And so this is a much broader topic than I was allowing it to be. So for that, I apologize. It didn't hit me until much too late that like we're talking about, people who aren't worried about where their food's going to come from, making smarter choices. People who have a structure that can keep them warm and the rain off their head, who have health insurance, who have, all of these things. So I want to apologize for that, because I completely missed a part of this country's health and chronic disease.
Same here. Yeah.
Is we got some factors I didn't consider until just now.
Yeah, no, that was well said. I agree with that. And then, not included in the Maha report or their platform, like the leading cause of death in children is gun violence. And that's not, that's a health issue. If children are dying, you can relate that to health. Also not addressed is, one of the major killers is tobacco and alcohol.
Yeah.
And, so I don't know, I think that the government could increase fund. They've cut funding basically in half, research funding in half for NIH, NSF. The grants are cut in half. But if we could get, funding back, expand healthcare access, evidence-based nutrition programs in schools. I don't know, there's just little things like that, which I know people are saying, I don't want the government to be involved, but yet it's CDC's fault that we're all, the CDC's fault that we're all dying, I guess.
Yeah. They're not doing anything about it.
They're not doing anything. And
thanks for the call back, by the way. That was great. That was a good call.
These are things that could be done, I guess, and that could help, because I do think that Americans need, we have the resources and the means. We should be putting those to good use to help Americans be healthier. I know other countries. I'm glad that, like, the Health and Human Services, HHS, just banned a certain red dye, right? I don't think it was red 40, but it was.
No, but they did, yes.
Yeah, they
banned a dye.
That's a step in the right direction. Like red 40, which is a big deal here, that's already banned in our peer countries. Yeah. And so, them doing that is a really good step in the right direction. We need more of that and less of the political stances about certain things. We need more of the things that are actually gonna help us, I think.
Gonna move the needle when it comes to health.
Yeah.
That's kind of the title of your department. So let's try to, and again, short of, remember everybody, it was John's plan. He was going to start taxing people who don't follow the guidelines. But short of that, all you can do is make recommendations and give people information, but they have to actually be the ones to do something.
Yeah.
We maybe listening to this show, maybe, whatever and I don't like this part. We are coming up to the new year, maybe make a resolution. I don't know. I don't like resolutions, but hey, if it works for you, let's do that. But, start small. Mm-hmm. But start making changes, because it's frustrating that, I didn't know about the stat about childhood death and guns. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the things I'm talking about are preventable. Mm-hmm. This lifestyle, what did I say? But the chronic disease from lifestyle choices is preventable for a lot of us. And yet, we just don't do the things, and I'm talking about myself. I don't do the things I know that I should do, and it's bothering me lately. So I wanted to get it. Wanted to get off my chest. So the last thing, boy, I'm really going to blow the show up right now. Uh-oh. But I'm sorry, but these thoughts come to me, and I gotta get them out there for you to say you're a crazy person, Sean. But you were talking about Europe and the things that Europe is doing. I've never been to Europe. But my understanding of public transportation and foot traffic, like they walk a lot of places, places they don't have cars. And so what I'm getting to is, in this country, which I think most people would agree is a set up as a industrial country, meaning, so here, I'll say, here's my hot take of the whole show. Is I think that as much as we've talked about scientists and public health experts who do the work every day, they put out or update evidence-based recommendations for disease prevention and health promotion. And let's say we get the next step, the one we're advocating, people start to follow it. I still feel like that we have a lack of political will in this country to actually invest in evidence-based public health policy because it would cut into the profits of too many powerful industries.
There's your conspiracy.
That's my conspiracy theory.
I agree with you on that. Yeah, I think
The
that's
gun
true.
industry in this country,
Mm-hmm.
they have one of the largest, they have like the third largest lobby
Mm-hmm.
in the country for guns. The automobile industry, you can go down the list of all the industries
Yeah.
that might be harmed by an actual public health policy
Mm-hmm.
based in science.
Yeah, they would be. Yeah, almost anything that we've talked about is going to be stepping on the toes of some big industry.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that is true. And then just how we built our cities makes it even that much more difficult to try to,
Mm-hmm.
include public transportation and things, and just, sprawling was the idea. And yeah,
But they
it
are
is a lot
building.
different.
There's a place in Arizona that I read about that they're building commuter, like they're walking cities.
Oh, okay.
Like there's no cars in the city. You walk everywhere. And then there are cars in the city, but if I remember what I read, but they're city-owned cars. You could just walk up to a electric vehicle and get in and use it and bring it back or whatever. But again, you should look that one up on your own. Don't listen to Crazy Sean. But we can build, or when we're looking at updating cities or making these changes or whatever, we can make these changes.
You should you should go to Europe and visit, and
I want to.
it's just like you stay in a hotel or an Airbnb or something in town. It's so nice because you don't have to rent the car. So like at the airport, you can there's a train or a tram, or you can do, they have Ubers. So you can get to your hotel or a shuttle, and you get there, and then everything you need, you just walk out and walk around, and there's stores, grocery stores, and they have them, strategically located because they know that there's a certain number of people in this area that are going to need groceries. And so I'm going to invest to put a grocery store here so I can make money. So they're smaller, but there's more of them. And they kind of give what that community really is wanting for food sources and things. So it's really, I love it. I love walking down to a little coffee shop and going different places. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, well, so that's on my list. Go to Europe. But
Go to Europe.
I have kept you way too long. We're at an hour and 17 minutes. And I promised you I'd keep it under an hour, but I did not.
And we didn't even get to the science report scandal, the AI generated science report scandal that the HHS put out, where they had AI write it, and the citations were wrong, and I just had a whole thing lined up for that.
I'm so sorry I didn't let you get
I just wanted to rant. Well, I didn't get to rant enough, I guess.
Yeah, well, this is a lot of me just expressing my frustration. So I appreciate you letting me do that. I really appreciate the information. Yeah, I mean, I feel better about this particular problem than I did before the show started. And I mean that sincerely. I was so jumbled up. I was so frustrated about this topic. And then now I don't feel great about it, but I feel a little bit better about it.
Good.
I have some direction, some things I feel that are in my control that I can do. And that's all.
And I think you really hit the point. There's no need to argue with people and get in fights. So the point is not to give talking points for one side or the other to fight. It's just, where do I find the best information, the most accurate information on what I should do? That's really what matters. People can argue and, kind of go on little rants like I did today, and it doesn't matter because you just go find the evidence and, go with what it says.
Yeah. But the biggest thing is not to let the person, telling you or make an argument, or the person on TikTok or Facebook or wherever, let that then have you go, oh, that's the truth.
Yeah, I hope
because
I hope
there's some compelling arguments made, some numbers thrown around that even I go, is that true? And I want to be able, for my own edification, to go and look it up and find the study, find the research, find the stuff, and go, oh, okay, that's not true.
Yeah, but they also say They also say, and it's the dopaminergic pathway to the cerebellum, and these other words they throw in that you go, well, I can't look all
I
that
don't know
up,
what that
so
is.
I'll just have
Yeah.
to take their word for it. Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah, it's
So
hard.
that's what
It's
I'm
hard.
really trying to work through, is just for myself, what's closest to the truth right now. What's going on with my health and everybody's health? How do we either stay healthy, get healthy? How do we figure this out if we're a little bit rudderless right now, according to you? And it's scary.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do we do that?
It is scary. I think the only thing that I wish, well, not the only thing, there's a lot of things I wish would change. The one thing I wish could change right away is that science, mainstream science, could come up with a hat that we could wear. So you would know, oh, you're on mainstream science's side. Then I
Yeah,
could wear
but
that
that
hat
would be a
around.
really long acronym to put on a hat. Science-based evidence and research. I'll come up
To
with one.
prove the null hypothesis
To
of the.
prove the null hypothesis. It's
Yeah,
too
that would be
much.
too many.
Yeah,
Too many
too much.
letters on our acronym. It'd wrap all the way around the hat like twice.
Hmm.
Yeah, that'd be hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, John. Sorry.
All right.
Again, thank you for the time. I know that you don't have a lot of it, so when you devote it to helping me work through my problems, I appreciate it. Everybody else, if you hung in for an hour and 20 minutes of us ranting, I appreciate
I
y'all.
hope
Thank
Philip's
you.
still there.
And I think Philip's pretty devoted listener.
Okay, good.
From what I
Good.
hear. But
Thank you, Philip.
hey, if anybody else got their Spotify Wrapped and had us in their podcasts or numbers, share it with us. Would you, either on wherever you're listening to the show or on our social medias?
Please do. Yeah.
I'd love to hear it. I think it'd be fun for us to shout out some other people. So
Yeah.
if you care, want to get a shout out, let us know. And until next week, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you then.
Grain to Sean.